What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to another Randy Johnson's Castball. This is the Lost Art Podcast. Lost Art, of course, being a metal band from the southeast area of Massachusetts, specifically the New Bedford area. Thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate you listening along as we are digesting and reflecting on the music that we've created, especially with our new EP coming out, From the Ether, on November 18th. We hope you enjoy listening to that. And today I have a very special guest, our guitarist, Chris.
Hey-o.
Say hello to the people. Excellent.
What's up? This is fun. After I heard the first one, I was like, oh, fuck, I want to do this.
Well, we're very pleased to have you.
We're doing it. This is great.
And we're doing it in a very special way here. Hopefully that's captured.
I'll do it when it's time. I have to finish this bottle first.
Right. Well, just so everybody knows that we drink and that we're cool.
Yeah.
That seems important to know that we can hang.
Yeah.
Anyway, so today we're going to go through another track on the album From the Ether. If you listen to the last one that we did, that was about Randy Johnson's Fastball, the single that we released on October 18th. And today we're going to be talking about one of the other tracks called Ancients. A bit of a longer track, maybe a little bit more complex. And
definitely,
this is something that, let's jump into it. I think the common perception is that this is largely a you and me song. Am I right there?
And I wrote that down. That was actually the first note that I wrote down is with, I guess if you were to consider musically, like just from a strictly music standpoint, I would say this is the one that you and I did the most collaborating on.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Up until, for a while, it was either, you had a lot of songs that you were kind of coming to, and there were a few like, Titan and some of the older ones, a little bit of like Iron Horse and stuff where I put lyrics in, like I wrote lyrics to Titan and stuff, but that was about the extent of it because you were coming in with a lot of music. And then, obviously the other two, which we haven't done podcasts for, Odin Death and Deus Ex, those are very much my creation. So this was the first one where like you and I were kind of bouncing back and forth doing a lot of the music stuff, which is cool. I actually look back on it like pretty fondly. Because
it's just a fun process.
Yeah. And so what's been my process for a little while, or what was for a while, is, whether it be after practice or just at home, I'm just kind of sitting and just playing and coming up with stuff. Right. And occasionally I would get something that sounds cool, like cool enough for me to want to like, just record it on my phone so I have it for later. And then I would just throw it in the band chat. And, this isn't to say that the other two, Casey and Brian, don't find it as interesting or whatever, but usually they're maybe less in a position or less with, as much going on where you kind of jump at it. Like they're like, oh, they might say like, oh, that's pretty cool. But you're the one that usually takes it a step further and you're like, oh, cool. Like that's awesome that we could do something like that. We do something with this, blah, blah, blah. So that I think is how it started. I don't know how you remember it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a function of what my favorite aspects of basically why I do this, I think.
Right.
We've talked about kind of placing ourselves on a continuum of what are the most important reasons for you to be in a band, essentially.
Right. Yeah, sure.
And I think somewhat famously, Casey is definitely the live person. He's a born performer. And then quite on the other side of the spectrum, there's me, who loves the writing process, seeing it come, from an idea all the way to a finished product in its most perfect form in the studio. And so I think that's why, just to explain that's why I jump on ideas when you come in with them. And as far as the form that this idea was in, when you brought it, forward to the whole crew here, I think you had largely a skeleton of the song fleshed out. There was a chorus. There was what we thought was kind of an intro type part. There's a lot of that.
That's, and we've brought this up multiple times. For me in particular, is that usually the first thing I write is usually the intro. I don't know why it happens like that. I don't know. I think because the way I write, I think that the riff that I write is usually something that can be considered as part of the body of the song. I mean, that can be said for Ode and Death. That can be said for Deus Ex. Like, all of these things where, I write this riff and I'm like, and it's weird because it's funny. I guess I take that and try to flip that on its head a little. Like if I know what my patterns are, I try to work against that in a way.
I've noticed that.
Where I'm like, oh, let's like, can this be something other than an intro, or am I just falling into that? And I mean, if it's good and it works as an intro, it is what it is,
Yeah. I think. Go ahead.
I wrote the intro. I think I had a chorus. I'm trying to think of what else. Intro part 2.
Yeah, the intro was multiple parts,
and
right?
then,
and then there's a chorus.
This was, and then I sent that over to you. And then this was cool is that I wanted to get into this a little bit. Is this was in December of 2020, December into January, February of 2021.
Yeah,
because Katie and I were living in an Airbnb because she was on a clinical rotation.
Oh, this was then. Okay.
Yeah, and so I wasn't on clinical at that point, and so I had a lot of time to myself, and it was still pretty heavy quarantine and all that stuff, or right. Lockdown or whatever you want to call it. And so that was the first time that you and I like started having like Zoom sessions to talk about this stuff, and that was pretty cool because you took all the worry of being like, oh shit, like, I don't want to have to go over to their house. How is that going to affect, whatever, like everyone's super high anxiety about it anyway. So it was nice to still be able to do this and just kind of go at our own pace still, because we're just having like a little like Zoom thing. So then you came through with the verse, which I really enjoyed that because it was different. This whole thing, and we'll get into this more, but this is, for a while, this one really stood out for me as like one of our really different songs. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's funny you should say that because it really was and I haven't thought about this much until now, but it was a landmark moment as far as our writing process. It was different in so many ways. Like you said, we were writing on over Zoom and sending ideas via video back and forth. Mm-hmm. And it was also the first time where I started writing kind of on my computer using Guitar Pro.
Right. That really made a big difference.
It's really revolutionized our writing. Very nice. Very nice. For better or worse, I think the jury honestly is still out there. I have some reservations about the way I've been writing ever since transitioning to that style and that method, but and I want to get more into that as well.
Right.
But yeah, I think the verse was something we actually wrote like live on video, which was interesting to do. Something we almost never do writing sessions as a group, and then also to do it on video was this kind of strange other element.
There was a short period of time where we brought Brian and Casey in just because like you and I had already had like one session, and they just kind of like zoomed in on their phones, but just to kind of get them in and be like, hey, look, this is what we're working on. Like, we just want to keep you guys in the loop.
They were like, yeah, sounds good.
But well, it's funny because I think introducing Guitar Pro and doing, writing on the computer and getting these, putting the tracks together that when you listen to them, you get like a general idea. If anything, it helped open up the conversation about everyone's preferred writing styles. So like, he'll talk about it when, whenever it'd be cool to do like the four of us doing one of these. Excuse me.
Nice.
But Brian's not a huge fan of Guitar Pro, or at least in the listening to it aspect, because it doesn't sound like music in the sense that it sounds very computerized, very like we'd make the joke.
He always called it the 8-bit.
Yeah, 8-bit, 64-bit, whatever you want to, which, it serves a purpose. But at the same time, we're like, okay, well, it's given him an avenue to say like, oh, I like coming in and, I want to do a session, just the four of us, where we all just kind of come in and start throwing stuff at the wall and seeing, what we come up with. Or, I think that, and that's fine. I mean, that's not necessarily how I write, but it can be. But I'm not one that like writes something and then saves it. in the sense that like I don't have this like bank of stuff where if we were to come in the four of us, I'd be like, hey, here's something I wrote 6 months ago. Like if I write it and I'm interested enough to bring it to the band, I send it out to the chat.
It goes out on the table immediately.
Right. You know, and so what, you know, maybe that stuff maybe it can get overlooked for that reason, but you know, at least it's brought us to a point where, you know, we can write something. You said Casey's, you know, very much like the performer, does a lot of live stuff. He's also kind of like he's very much like a fine detail type of person where, you know, like it's the body of the song. You know, he's usually like, oh, this is cool. I like this. But then, you know,
you and I are body guys.
Yeah.
Sure. Whatever that means.
It might be these small accent parts or, you know, small things that, you know, he does a good job of, you know, like how is this presented to like the person listening to it, or, you know, so he's that, and Brian's like that too. I feel like if you and I are the writers of a song, if we get the majority of it down, they then kind of fine tune it, which actually I think unless you had a specific direction for where you wanted to go, what I think I'd like to talk about that is that musically, this was very collaborative for you and I, but then to make it even more collaborative, the lyrics are almost entirely written by Brian, right?
As I recall.
Yeah. So, you know, he came up with the lyrics and kind of this overall framework of, you know, gods and kings and ancients and all that stuff. And, you know, like, you know, drew on a couple of different things, like different mythology and video games and music, and which we all do that, you know?
Oh, yeah.
You know, so it's cool in that way. But then then obviously the, you know, verse 2B where, you know, in the second half, it really breaks out, a lot of chords. You and I are doing a lot of vocal stuff. I mean, we've all said that, like, holy shit, like that part when it kicks in, it's usually one of the one of the big parts of the song that stick out for us.
Well, let's
Am I getting too ahead?
capitulate to my need to have wildly stringent structure in this and go through part by part.
That's why I'd rather we have order.
Yeah, no, it's you're saying a lot of things that I definitely want to get to about verse 2B, the famous verse 2B.
Sure.
At least among us four.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's if we're going to go through part by part here, let's of course start with this intro, which I think is really unique.
So freaking cool.
Not just on this album, but as far as anything we've ever written or thought we would write. Spirits wait, hollow cry. And the way it came about, as I recall, is that we had this idea to have this subdued chorus the first time around, and then it would really punch you in the face the second and third time. And we tried it a few times. We weren't sure what the instrumentals were going to look like under that.
Yeah.
Really, the backbone of it was supposed to be this very deep harmony with three different voices.
Yep.
And so we knew we wanted that, but it just wasn't coming together as part of the chorus. And we said, well, what about as an intro? And we tried that a few times in kind of a live setting, or at least in rehearsal. Weren't sure about the instrumentals to go there, and we sort of left it by the wayside for a little bit. It was played live many times without that, and it sounded fine.
Right.
But we knew we wanted to give it a try in the studio. Right?
Yeah, we knew. So I remember when we first tried it as like a part itself. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. It's coming together. Like it just where it was in the song, there was so much energy in the parts leading up to that point that it really fell flat, kind of, you know, where it wasn't, it didn't have the like surprise in a way, I guess I want to say. Not necessarily surprise, but like, you know, you're listening to the song and, you know, we have the intro, which really, you know, hits really hard, and the verse, which is really cool and dynamic, and then you have the pre-chorus, which that like the runs are really cool. And then you have this part that just kind of
drops
really
off.
Brings the energy way down.
Yeah.
And it just didn't feel right. So, you know, then you're right. We just kind of cut it out in terms of, because we wanted to play the song live to at least just see what people thought of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, then, we always knew that we were going to do something with it in the studio. And so now it's funny, it took being in the studio to figure out what is going to sound good, that now I'm ready to do it live again. And I'm like, this is, well, it's
We'll see what comes out of that.
Yeah, I mean, Casey has a couple of ideas. He said that he wanted to play it as a live track, like play the recording of it. But I'm willing, if we can work out where it sounds good with us doing it just live vocally, I'd like to do that. So
we can definitely talk more about it. I have some reservations about just the ability to project at that pitch and tone. It's so low, especially my part.
Yeah.
It's difficult to EQ things live.
Yeah, but it was fun doing it.
A lot of fun in the studio, where you have that level of control to be able to bring certain things up, and you, I don't know, if you've got really good speakers, as I've listened to it, in the car or with some of my better speakers at home, it really pops in a way that I was so pleased with.
I think it was fun. Like, we didn't do it like once or twice and then copy and pasted. Like, we did it 6 or 7 times, which I think was really cool, because there's some maybe minor variation in it, but that's what makes it sound like it's 25 people and not, just 3 people, just loud 3 people. Yeah. So I like that.
Yeah. And then we kick into the intro, which, like you said, was probably the first thing you wrote. I loved the sound of it when I first heard it, and for whatever reason, a reason I can't quite justify at this point, but I was like, let's try to bring in a lead part here. I think, I was taking note of the notes that you were using, and I was like, let's try to get a lead that really sounds like a harmony. And it was really my intention to get those notes, certainly matched up rhythmically with what you had laid down, but I think in the end it didn't end up as a harmony the way I wanted it to be, to kind of blend with the original part. It really popped more like a lead part, and for better or worse.
Yes and no. I mean, like, there are a couple of notes that when they match up with mine, they harmonize really well, but it's one of those things where I like it. I like it better than, say, if we were to not do that and just play it 4 times over, it's going to get old. So to play it the 2 times, Brian and I, and then Brian breaks off into it, it's not like it overshadows my part. It's not like you can't hear them overlapping, and the fact that they even though they're maybe not a harmony, they at least complement each other, which I think is cool. And I enjoy how that came about.
I certainly don't think they clash. It was just
no, not at all.
Yeah, just something where I thought maybe it would sound more like, like a dueling guitar type situation.
Sure.
But really, it's like the spotlight ended up on Brian. I don't even think it was a mixing issue. I think it was the part. It was the way it was written.
Yeah.
Which, again, for better or worse, I think it's a fine lead part.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's really good.
So yeah, let's get into the verse, because this really was interesting. The fact that it came together, like, just right there while we were working on Zoom together. That's not how I normally like to do things. I like to be able to sit with parts for a long time and tweak things. But we kind of locked it in just during that conversation.
I think so. I think we didn't write it from scratch, though. You definitely came in with like a basic idea, and then I played it out and I liked it. And that's at least I remember it that way. I think it was like, I think you were like, oh, I kind of want to have, like, like you said, use the word subdued, I think is the perfect way to describe it, because it's like, it's different, especially for a verse. It's this kind of, soft, but almost, I like to use the term grungy, because like when I play it, I look for, kind of this like really fuzzy kind of low end feel to it. Because it like floats, which is really, really cool. And then, going into these, the sliding up, just kind of doing these little pull-offs and different stuff. I was like, this is really cool.
I think at that point I was getting a little paranoid, maybe self-conscious about All the parts that had been written so far were kind of, I'm going to say in the same key. That's not quite what I mean, but they were largely, everything was very riff driven, derived from the root note. And I was like, let's get just a little bit of color in here, chords wise. There's actually, I would really consider that verse a key change.
But I mean, I feed on that though, because I don't do that necessarily in my writing.
Yeah, it's definitely a yin and yang thing you and I have.
But again, it helps me because I like I said earlier, like I try to identify my patterns and try to actively work against those patterns and see kind of what I can come up with.
Yeah. No, and I don't think it was a bad thing that you had these very powerful riffs that were strongly rooted in the key that we were in. But it was just something a different direction I thought we should go in for the verse, and I think it worked out well. Like you said, it also goes in a different direction dynamically. It's quieter.
Which then, I guess, while we're here, contrast with the fact that what Brian wrote is to have screaming vocals over that.
Yeah,
which it was really, which just makes it that much more different.
It wasn't jarring at all, though. Like when I first heard it, I was like, yeah, this is absolutely what should be here. He made a great choice there, and a great choice in the studio as well. When we were reviewing how everything was sounding, he said, "What about an effect that was like, the best I can do is like call it a whooshing or something."
That shit's awesome.
I was really pleased with every aspect of how that verse came out and how it came together. It was just I mean,
and then actually in this, I guess what we're talking about when it comes around the second time, because the first time it's Casey kind of by himself doing a few lines, and then it's you and I, which I also had a note for that because, there's a lot of range in this, and you and I vocally, at least for that first half, are very much like on equal footing, which I like in the sense that, like, I do the chorus by myself, and I do some lines in the verse that you're not there for, but you're not backup vocals.
Through shade and shadows all shall be reborn. The Empress is waiting.
You and I are singing together where you're just as much the lead in that moment as I am. Through shade and shadows and all those lyrics which come through where I'm doing a low, you're doing a high, and then the second half through, I'm doing a low, you're doing a high, and I think that's awesome.
It's so interesting you should say that because I think that was something with our first recording experience doing from Santa Sea. Yeah. We had this thing, and I think the chorus of Titan, right? If you'll indulge a brief aside here, where we were like, I had these vocals that came in, and we were saying this should really be treated like just a second lead. It should be up. Didn't necessarily come out that way on the album, and I think I had kind of the opposite attitude when it came time to record this. I actually really felt like my vocals should be to say subdued again, but a little quieter.
Okay,
definitely in the background. I'm not saying that's how it necessarily manifested, and I think it's interesting that we think of it in different ways.
Okay, well, so I guess going off that point, when you listen to what you do at the end of the chorus, you're doing a harmony part that's lower than my part, but that's because that chorus is largely driven by my vocals. When you say hollow ground and you're kind of low, and then you're going high in the first two, and then when I go high at the end, you're going low.
Right.
But
we're always doing that, switching back and forth.
Right, exactly. But that one you can consider like very 75-25 me.
Yeah, and again, this is all part of the larger project of wanting to actually have backup vocals feel like backup vocals, in my mind,
and have just what I would call just like maybe a dual lead sound like a dual lead.
I guess, yeah. I think I just wanted to do less of that dual lead thing.
Okay.
Not for any reason. I didn't want to be punching everybody in the face with these harmonies. I think actually it can be really powerful to have a harmony where the higher part or the backup vocal is a little quieter.
Yeah, definitely.
And I tried to have that manifest in the recording process a little bit. It didn't always, and I don't think it's necessarily made the record worse. It was just something I wanted to try going into this, and so I tried to bring my vocals down in a few places very deliberately. So I guess we get into the pre-chorus a little bit. This was something interesting that I wanted to bring up, that I really pictured Casey as the star of the show of this pre-chorus. Yes, you guys have some intricate runs with that, or whatever it is, and
with
then
the bass accents.
I wanted him to come in with those accents.
Yeah.
In fact, I knew I wanted those notes, and I said, this is something I would normally give to one of the guitars, but let's try giving Casey something a little fancier. Let him be the star of the show. He's the performer after all. Yeah. And he just hated it. Like he hates that kind of thing, as it turns out. So we don't do that much anymore. But he doesn't like being up on the neck. He doesn't like playing all by himself. Yeah. Maybe I'm mischaracterizing it, and he can get in here and set the record straight. But I just remember him telling me like. I was like, I want to do something for you here. I want to give you a kind of a lead bass part.
I mean, it's like, cool.
Don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, for this song though, I think it works really well. Maybe not, going forward, maybe not something he wants you to do every time. But I mean, it's certainly. It's funny because when we would, if there was a practice where he wasn't there and we played it, I'm thinking about it actively. Yeah, because
it's a lot of space for us to all count without him there.
Yeah. Or I'd do it into I'd go dun, dun, like into the mic, because I'm like, I like that. I like that it's, we don't do that very often, where there's a guitar part separate from the bass part, where the bass stands out in that way. So I like that.
And I think when we got in the studio, this was something Casey noticed immediately, and Dustin too, who was helping produce the whole thing. Just that we were really missing that low end on the da-na-na-na, like those big notes at the beginning, because he was trying to get situated for his part. So we found a compromise where he can sort of play both, and he plays both on the record, and I think it's worked out. It's not a part with lyrics, so it really needs to be full and powerful.
Exactly.
Yeah. And now we're into the chorus. So something that jumped out at me the first time he brought this, vocally speaking, is that it starts on the 4th degree of the scale. Not to get too technical, but that slumber, it's a matter of musical debate, I think, whether that's a consonant or a dissonant interval, but it's not a note that you would normally land on to feel like the real power of that note. Okay. It's not in the major chord, or sorry, I guess this song is in a minor key, so it's not in the chord. That jumped out at me. It stuck out, and it took some getting used to.
So, I mean, for me, it's funny because, as much as very nice, as much as I, just kind of make these decisions, they're not really like, I want a lot of my decisions to be based on like theory stuff, and I just don't know that much theory, but that's why I'm like trying to learn about it. So a lot of times I just kind of do I don't want to say go with my first instinct, because my first instinct is definitely not always correct. But I just do what almost feels natural. Yeah. And that's my first. So my first instinct is to do what feels natural. And if you guys respond to it in a way that you're like, yeah, that's good, then I'll keep going with that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what I'm locked into.
Well, I think it was interesting for me because that would absolutely not have been my first instinct. And I think I wanted to embrace that when I first heard it. I was like, this is not a choice I would have made. I think that's a good thing. Yeah. Let's roll with this.
And I will say that, 90%, I mean, that's 90% of what I write or what I draw on is usually what I'm listening to at the time. Mm-hmm. And so that can be a good and a bad thing, again, because I use a lot of that stuff as like a jumping off point.
So what was it then?
Well, so at that time, again, because it's funny, I can remember it very clearly, is that in, December 2020 into 2021, it was winter time, and I was listening to a lot of Baroness.
That was the Baroness phase.
It was Baroness. So John Baisley, the lead singer Baroness, especially when you listen to their earlier stuff, like if you listen to like the Red album, he has this like deep not guttural. It has a little bit of grain on it, but he has this very deep, powerful, like low. I need it powerful. I need one of those screens when I hit those P's. Sorry
we only
about
bought
that.
one screen,
I'll
and
sit
it's
back
for
here.
me.
No, but so when he sings, and they have a lot of cool harmonies, especially on their earlier stuff. It's just this really deep, very strong note, and so that's what I was going for.
So you were focused a lot more on the timbre of the note almost than making a choice of what note.
Yeah, so I mean, I tried that note and where where that chord starts the chorus, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool, and that's even kind of sounds like how he would do it, I think. And so I just started to run with that, and so then when I slumber deep, especially that deep, if you listen to a lot of their stuff, I tried to mirror that because I freaking love their vocal stuff that they do.
Yeah.
It's funny. The inverse of that is when I say wait, that note used to fall really flat for me because I would either run out of air or it's like wait, and it started to break up. And so then when we did it, so I obviously I started to do it more in here, but then when we were actually in the studio, making sure that I had enough air behind it to really push that out as strong as all of the other words that I did, it started to sound a lot better. And then I started to build the confidence with it. And so that was when that kind of came through for me, which was cool.
And that's interesting you should mention that, because I think that's what really sold me on it, was that you started at this fourth degree, and it was a couple times actually you say slumber deep, and then you go down to the third, which is more consonant, and then the same thing, you go up to the fifth at the spirits wait. So I think that made those transitions more powerful. So I really liked what you did with it and what you came up with. And then now I'm thinking about the backing vocals, what I might have originally thought of as just another lead, where that hollow ground.
Yeah.
And I very deliberately took the levels down on that when we were mixing it in the studio. I think the way that it kind of fades into the background, it almost sounds like another instrument because it's just so straightforward. So I really like the way that came through in the studio. And I think this is a good opportunity to talk about how, when we were playing this live, we were like, we know this song has potential. There's a lot of intricacy here. There's very cool parts, but it just felt like it wasn't capturing people's attention live.
Yeah.
And what we said at the time, and maybe to some of us it felt like a bit of a cop-out, we said, maybe this is just meant to be an album track. This is a studio track that's really going to pop in there. And we weren't sure about that. We said it to make ourselves feel better. And then I think we got in the studio, and I'm speaking for myself, but I think it's my favorite track on the album.
Cool.
I'm just gonna come out with that.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So
it was a sleeper for sure.
Yeah.
Because I guess speaking as one of the people that wrote it, I was a little bummed at first, but I got it. I understood. I was like, oh, this, that's fucking awesome. Like, I want to play it live. And I think the fact that we tried to do that whole soft chorus thing, I think that gave us like an overall, it put like a stamp on the song as like a, back burner, or, where we were kind of like, are we going too out there with this song? Like, how is this going to be received? Because to be honest with you, I mean, I would need the other guys and you to all collectively remember with me, but we've only played it live like 2 or 3 times.
That
maybe
sounds about right.
Maybe not even,
because we've been plagued by this thought that it's like it's not popping live.
Yeah.
Maybe there's too much going on that was gonna come through on the album,
right?
And which I think it did.
I think it's definitely our perception of it, because the intro hits really hard, now that I feel, I guess, I mean, confidence has always been a big thing for me too. So now having been in the studio and doing the chorus and really feeling it come through, I'm like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
This is really, really good.
And I am a little bit worried, to be honest. This is, getting into more bigger picture stuff, but the writing that we've been doing lately really mirrors the process that we had with this one. So I wonder if we are maybe inadvertently creating more tracks that are really going to be made for the studio in a way. I mean, I think about, spoiler alert, if we're going to talk about some full-length stuff that we're working on right now for our next album. But, Havoc, song we're calling PP right now, I think both of those might end up being a little bit more studio leaning. We'll see,
I guess so, but then there's a part of me that says, like, I think what makes us feel like it's just a studio track is maybe collectively we don't feel the song is as tight as we'd like it to be.
Maybe.
And so then it's just, let's get it tight.
Yeah.
Because like one of the songs that you just mentioned, the intro part is me playing and a lot of, just kind of string skipping, and I'm doing a lot of vocal stuff, and it's hard. And obviously we'll have no problems with it when we get into the studio. But it's something I would like to get tight enough live because it's too good of a song for us to not want to play it for people.
Yeah.
So I think that's a part of it is, like I said, I think doing the soft chorus really threw us for a loop, and we're like, oh, maybe this song's not as good as we thought it was, or maybe it's not as tight, or maybe it's not as put together. And so now we've kind of woken up a little bit and gotten into the studio and heard the finished product and being like, why didn't we see it in this light the entire time? Why did it take us? But I guess whatever works,
Yeah, I think it might have also been a symptom of a larger issue where, like I said, it was one of the first ones I wrote on Guitar Pro, and what that meant for me was that I was actually writing things before and then teaching myself how to play them afterwards.
That's interesting.
And I still do this to this day with pretty much anything new that we write. And again, that's a for better or worse thing. We can debate the merits of writing in that way.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just of some concern to me that maybe that is a little bit less of a genuine of a way of writing. I'm really not sure. I still think about these things.
I mean,
struggle with them a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, it's funny that you say that, is because, like, there are certain things, like in the one that we were just working on earlier.
Yeah.
Like, there's that part that's, that 7/8 part. I don't even play that well right now. Like, I haven't even practiced it that much. I haven't had, we've been focusing on other things, but like, so when I'm playing it, I'm getting frustrated because I'm like, oh, I'm sucking at this right now. We still created that music. I just got to learn how to play it better so we can play it live and play it in the studio. But it's still you still created that. So whether or not you, like, that could be said for anything. You could sit there with a piano and play it on a piano. That, just because you didn't play it on a guitar doesn't mean that you didn't put those notes together in that arrangement.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe that's why I'm a little bit more intensive in the writing process now, writing in that way, because I see, every single moment is under a microscope, and I'm like, I'm often asking myself the question, is this complex enough? Which is a horrible question to be driven by in the music writing process. And yet, I am.
God, I know. And we had not to go off on too much of a tangent, but I mean, that was a conversation that we had after our last show when you said, Haken, the band that you like, very progressive, very, intricate. And you're like, if they were to just do like a really cool, simple chorus that's just like in 4/4, like, I'm into it because I know that they can do the other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's almost like sometimes I feel like we have something to like prove to ourselves, maybe, where I'm like, I know I'm better than this. I can write better than this. But intricate time signatures doesn't mean better if it sounds like
shit.
Right, exactly. So it's like, that's something I constantly battle with too, because again, we're going back to patterns and different things where we're like, does this sound too much like the stuff that I always write? Does this sound too easy? And it's like, well, too easy for who? Too easy for us to play? Like, if it's good, it's good.
And writing in an odd time signature, this is a good thing to be driven by with writing, is that the idea of writing in odd time signature or an unfamiliar time signature can get you out of old habits because you're now forced to fit into this completely unfamiliar framework. Right. And so I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that you are benefiting from more than I am. Honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if I was left to my own devices, I'd write, everything in 4.
Right. You would write what you kind of feel.
And that doesn't make it bad.
No, it definitely doesn't.
But there is a voice kind of telling us like, do more, or you can do better than that, or you can make it, And so if we are genuine about it, where like I said to you earlier, I'm like, I want to write something in 6, like 6/8 or 6/4 or whatever. That's just because I heard a song in that time signature and I was into it and I was like, I think this is something I could write. Not writing something and going, this is too easy. There's going to be one person in the crowd that's really good at music theory that's going to be like, these guys suck. Like, is this the best they can do? And it's, so we're writing for that. We're writing for that, like...
I am writing for that person.
We're writing for that critic that may or may not even exist.
I know. It's horrible. I mean, I want to be very clear. I am still very proud of the final products that we put out, 100%. But I am sometimes very ashamed of the where my motives come from.
Yeah.
In exactly the way we're talking about here. You said, we're writing stuff to maybe prove something to ourselves. I want to be very explicit. I have what is definitely an issue, a problem, where I am writing for exactly the person you described, where I want to be like, I need to make sure this person knows I'm smart, basically.
Yeah. And I mean,
not good.
No, it's not good, but I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if you're, I think if we were to take the easy way out and purposefully just write stuff like, in a, very simple way, just for the sake of, writing more music. Like if it was a quantity over quality thing. Yeah. But it's not, where, a perfect example is this song the new song we were working on earlier. Yeah. A lot of it is very, very simple time signatures, but I'm happy with it. I'm really happy with it.
Good for you, man. You're so much healthier than I am.
But the funny thing is that, we get to that part that's in like 7/8 and I'm like, okay, where do we go from here? Do we do another time signature? Do we just, or is it too easy? Like, what am I doing? And it's hard because I'm starting to think more about what you said, is that there's loads of stuff in this EP that has different, intricacies, like, the end, when we get there, obviously the end of Odin Death, I was really happy with that. That was a big step for me. Mm-hmm. There's a really cool time signature part in the bridge to this song that we'll get to. There's some different little proggy stuff, that bridge in Randy Johnson. I love that bridge. Like that's so much fun to play, and it leads right into that breakdown and it just kicks your ass. Like, so all of these things, and then don't even get me started on Down the Mountain. So it's like, so there is enough in here that, I think we can look at it in that light, where it's like, am I doing this in a genuine way because I think it sounds good and I really enjoy listening to it, or am I doing this because I feel like I have to?
Well, I think what I've learned from the fact that I really like the finished product is that the band needs all of the above. Yeah. It needs somebody like, I'm going to say you and Brian and Casey, who can really write, from... maybe this is more of a Brian and Casey thing, but writing based on feel. They hear something groovy in their mind and they just put it on paper. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think me, and maybe slightly to a lesser extent you, I would hear the thing in my mind and I would say, that's my first instinct. Mm-hmm. The first instinct can't possibly be the best. Mm-hmm. And so let's try to make this more complex. Mm-hmm. Again, it's just, and I think having both sides of that coin contributing ideas to the band has just made the project that much more interesting, and hopefully has made the music that much more fun. Yeah. That is quite a detour we took.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm okay with it as well. I said to Brian in the last podcast, like, this is almost like musical therapy for me. Like, I have a lot of things to work through here about.
And I don't know what we'll end up doing with this, but this is for our reference, which is cool, and it gets us talking about this stuff. And I'm sure that there might be people out there that that like I think it's interesting talking to people that like I find myself going like, oh, what must it feel like to just be a person that listens to music?
Yeah.
As opposed to playing music.
I've completely forgotten that.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that's like.
Yeah. And so I'm like, like when people, like Mastodon's a good example. Like, when people listen to Mastodon, I'm like, do you get what they're doing? And it's like, you don't have to play an instrument.
And it doesn't matter.
No, it has nothing to do with that. But in my head, I'm just kind of like, maybe there are people that, I'm sure that people that do play music that are in a band that know what it's like being in a band and trying to write original music. I'm sure a lot of people feel the way that we do.
Yeah. I feel like is like a chef who doesn't understand that non-chefs can taste food.
Yeah.
Like this is just like pure nourishment for you guys, right?
Yeah,
It's like you just taste the number of calories.
Yeah, you guys are just eating this to live, right?
Yeah.
You're not eating to enjoy it. Like, oh my God, that's so good.
And not even a world-class chef.
That's
like,
no, that's so good. And that's true.
I'm glad you like it.
No, that's absolutely true. Is because I mean, that's the majority of people.
Yeah.
Like the majority of people don't play music.
Yeah.
Like actually, without going into too much of a detour, it's like, I was on vacation the past week and a half, and so I'm like talking to people. Like, there's a few people at the wedding that like, emo or metal or pop punk or whatever, and I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, blah blah blah. I'm in a band. They're like, you're in a band? I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I can't be the only person that's in a band. But I'm like, I might be.
It feels so common.
It does.
Because we run in that circle.
Right.
A little bit.
Right. So that's why, so we're so...
On the outside of the circle. But.
Yeah. So, but it's just, we have such a narrow focus for that reason.
Yeah. Man.
All right.
What's a lot coming out here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's, if we're getting back to our process here that we've established, let's talk about your solo.
Okay. I'll try not to talk for 45 minutes about this.
Well, we already did.
The one thing I will say, this is hands down my favorite solo that I've ever written. Not that I've written a ton.
No shit.
Oh, easily.
Okay.
I have one more, and that's an Ode in Death, and that one's good. But I didn't think about it as deeply or as long as I did this one. Okay. As far as recording notes, what was really cool is, we did it. We went in, we tracked it, and then when Dustin sent us back, like the first or second round of kind of mixing it together and stuff, and I heard it, I was like, there was like one note, one little string bend that I wasn't happy with.
Okay.
Just because it didn't go as far, and I'm like, it's gonna kill me if I don't record it. And so I went back in, and he had that really cool, like that blue Ibanez that he bought, that he was just it was just like his screw around guitar. Like he has his nice few guitars that he plays on stage with. And then this one he was really hyped on. Yeah. But this one he was really hyped on because he just, it wasn't like super expensive, but he really liked all the ins and outs of it, the way it felt, the way it played, all the sound coming out of it. So I grabbed that one and I tracked the solo first try. So I was really happy about that. First try in the sense that of that second recording day. When I was writing it, again, drawing on what I'm listening to at the time. So a lot of what I was listening to was like High on Fire. And Matt Pike, who's the guitar player, lead singer, guitar player, he has this style that, first of all, he's very tone driven. So a lot of his tones are very like, deep and bassy and doomy and all that stuff. And there's just something, I can't put my finger on it. The way I describe it, it sounds like I'm knocking it, which is not at all true. Like it sounds almost slightly unrefined. He does a lot of like where he's like, so when I play it, I'm picking out those notes really quickly. He does a lot of stuff like that. He does a lot of runs. He just absolutely shreds. So I was kind of like, what's kind of in that style that would fit? And so I started by sliding up to a note and picking it out a bunch of times and then just kind of working my way down. And eventually I found that first run and I was like, oh shit, I got something here. was kind of my way of saying, like, if I was him, how would I write a solo in this section? And so then when it came together, I was like, oh, fuck. I was like, I love this. So, and it's, again, like I said, not that I do a bunch of solos. I think the only other one I have, well, Signs and like The Wall. And so like I have like a handful, yeah. But it's hands down my favorite. It's the one that I think complements the song. Like I've never been a person that just can go off and shred. Like I'm not that type. I sit there and I'm very deliberate with like each note. I can't just sit there and come up with something and be like, oh yeah, I had it good for a minute there, let me do that again and let me try something different, and again, I think that speaks to like how much I understand scales and stuff, so I'm working on that. But again, that was very much a feeling, and I follow that feeling, and I'm like, oh, that note doesn't work there. Without even knowing a scale or whether or not something fits, if it sounds like shit.
Of course.
And you're like, oh, that's gross. Let's go here, and that's better. Like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's work that way for a little bit. So yeah. So
you're a chef who can taste food.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
What it sounds like.
Yeah. I run a 1-star food truck. So.
Very cool. Well, no, I'm very pleased with the way it came out. I was thinking about, I really like the moment where, the drums kind of kick in. We have that kind of, what I'm going to call a little bit more of a proggy beat, and it transitions into this straight double bass. And I think that moment is powerful, and you really accent that with the with the notes you're hitting there. You get this kind of screaming.
Right.
It's
and
very
so
cool.
And that's why I like writing two apart as opposed to just like, let me just fill these 4 measures with as many notes as I can and just shred all over the place. It's like, I don't like that. I'm like, let's fit it to the part. What is actually, before we move on from that, is like, I did like it initially when we had that slow chorus where it was this slow kind of lumbering chorus, and then it kicks into a solo. Yeah.
That was one silver lining of that situation.
Right. But you're right. Now when I listen to it and I hear the way that the drums come in and that, it accents it very well. So I'm totally happy with how it came out.
All right, let's talk about verse 2B.
All right, let's do it.
I think we may have previewed this actually
a little bit,
a long time ago, 25 minutes ago. We had the song wholly written, verse 1, verse 2, and Brian came in for reasons nobody could discern. And I was like, I have this part I just want to slap on the end of the second verse. Like, it's not going in the first verse, it's just going to be a standalone thing. And you're like, okay, it's weird structurally, but let's hear it. And then it's just this powerhouse of a part.
Yeah, it's really sick.
Like I think probably my favorite part in the song. It's probably everybody's.
Yeah,
I think based on the amount of talking that we've done about it,
barring my solo.
Sorry, barring me, of course. I mean, who could prefer anything over that solo?
Yeah. No, it's great. And especially the vocal stuff that you do over it. You and I have a little bit of back and forth, which is really cool, because Casey and I have a back and forth in the first section of that verse, and then you have like those lines that you burn inside these walls. I think that's awesome. Like that really. So that's what.
It's so funny you should say that, because I've been thinking about this a lot every time I listen to it, and I did everything I could to beef up or like mask certain aspects of my performance. Like we doubled it. There's like a chorus effect on there. And then you just come in with just your like naked voice. It's just like out there, like balls swinging in the wind. And it's so much better. It's so much, it's better in every possible way. And it bothers me every time I listen to it. I was like, let me just stack the shit out of my part to try and get on par with what this guy's doing with like not even a hint of reverb. And it's just, it bothers me. But all that to say, I love the way your vocals sound over that part.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and mine
I was coasting off, you said something like months and months ago, and I've coasted off it ever since. It's like, you told me about when we were working on doing Titan. It might have been Titan or whatever. It was that EP. And you were like, you said, you're like, hey, it's like, so that you're like, oh, that sounds really good with the stuff that you put over it, like the effects and stuff. And he looked at you and he's just like, no, that's just
I
him.
remember that very specific.
You're
and
like,
I was like, oh, and you're like auto-tuning it in real time? And he's like, no, I haven't done any of that.
Yeah. And
I'm
like, no,
oh,
that's just him. And I
my
was
guy's just really talented. And
I appreciate that. And I'll never, that's something I will never, ever take for granted, because it's like, I think I've said it before. It's the only thing I've ever considered myself naturally good at.
yeah. And no, you're
not a natural athlete by any means.
You're entitled to feel that way, man. I'm very bad. I don't want to use the word jealous. Envious sounds better.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm envious of what you got over there.
Thank you.
I think everything with that part really came together, barring my need to compensate for my performance there. But no, it's everybody's favorite part for a reason. I think it pops so vibrantly because Brian's style is so apparent and so obviously different from both of ours, which are in themselves different.
Right.
But Brian comes in with these very, very chord driven. He likes that color. He likes a little flavor in his parts, and then at the end of the part with these kind of driving, that
which I think is really, really
kind
cool.
of like a metalcore type situation. So he packs everything in there. He said, I have one part to contribute to this song, and I'm gonna give it my all.
Yeah.
So good on you, Brian. And now I think we can get into the bridge a little bit, which
I fucking hate you so
can
much.
already tell is gonna bring out more of my writing neuroses. I talked about this with Brian when we were talking about Randy Johnson, because there's a very similar symptom going on here where most of the song is written and I'm like, we don't have anything here that's we don't have any odd numbers. We don't have anything that shows people how smart we are, which is the dumbest thing. And it honestly bothered me for a little while that bridge feels it feels like it's constructed around that. It almost maybe this doesn't feel the same way to you, but because I knew the thought process that went into it, I'm like, we have this 5/4 part. It almost feels shoehorned in here. I hope it doesn't come across that way.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, again, it's just being inside my head is a fucking nightmare.
Well, I mean, because now that I think about it, it's like, the way that the chorus ends, where we kind of go to the one and we slide up.
There's a moment that's held suspended for a second.
But where would it go after that? It's gonna go to a bridge or something anyway, because that's just
Well, but I'm not against the concept of bridges.
Well, no,
obviously.
But it's I like it for that reason, because it has to go somewhere. We know that it's going to go somewhere different, because we don't want to just end the song there, and we sure as shit don't want to repeat a part, because that's going to get that's going to get the neuroses going even more. When we're like, oh fuck, we're so repetitive,
doing this too much, so repetitive.
It comes out of nowhere, and you're right. I guess you can look at it in two ways. You can look at it as, we need to show people how smart we are, but in a more optimistic way, you can say, like, let's flex it a little bit. Let's show people how smart we are. Like, in the sense that, not that I'm certainly not.
I want to be very clear. I'm saying that extremely ironically.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but in the sense that it's like, what can go there? Let's fuck around with something that has kind of a weird time, and I think it fits just fine. It's just a pain in the dick to play.
Yeah, you were having trouble with it just today. It's already recorded.
Yeah.
Well, it's still a challenge.
I like it. I like that it's different, and I think it's one of those things where, it'd be one thing if the entire song for 5.5, 6 minutes is just this, like fest of insane time signatures and crazy stuff.
Well, we have plenty of those coming.
Right. But we had done, it's already a really solid song. Let's just throw a little extra spice on it just because we can. Yeah. And it's like, again, I don't think it feels forced or out of place or anything.
Oh, good.
And it's because especially the way we bring it back. We bring it back to that, it's almost the verse riff again. And then Casey has that scream that he layers underneath, like he layered a high, kind of like a mid high and then like a lower scream. And that shit is gnarly.
He sounds great.
Yeah. So I like it a lot. Humor me. Tell me, what time signature is it in?
It's in 5/4.
5/4.
And I should say if you're really listening along at home and care about this kind of thing, the last measure of every phrase of 4 measures is in 11/8, which is equivalent to adding 1/8 note on the end there, and it's just to make room for that and the slide there,
right.
Which I didn't feel like I had room for, so I've said I can do anything I want with this time signature. I'm gonna make that happen.
I mean, but why? I don't know. Why does anybody write in different time signatures? It's because it's different. You want it to stand out.
I have to imagine that's why.
Well, I mean, you have to, in the sense that,
there's no illusion that you can create that 5/4 or 7/8 or some of these bizarre odd time signatures sound natural or sound like the choice you would make inherently. Like that's just not the case. So you have to be specifically making an odd choice.
Right. And then it boils down to just, does it sound good?
Yeah.
Because if it sounds good, you'll probably get the person that listens to it and goes, oh, that was weird. But then they listen to it and they're like, if the part flows well and it's just well written, doesn't matter what time signature that it's in, because there's plenty of shit that's in 4/4.
Yeah.
So it's just like, that sounds like shit and it's boring. But you could, and then just in the way that you could look at an odd time signature and go, that's intricate but it sounds like shit. So then you could say, oh, that's 4/4 and that fucking bangs, or that's an odd time signature and that's really intricate and interesting, and that's cool. I'm happy they threw that in there. So,
and it's exactly like I was saying, but it takes
just got to get
types.
out of our own way.
Yeah, we have both. Between all of the people writing in the band, I think we get our fill of straightforward, groovy parts, and between you and me and probably Brian a little bit these days, leaning into things that feel a little more unnatural.
Because was that your first instinct though? Is what's going to go next? And it's like, why don't I try something that's a little?
If I'm being completely honest, it was exactly like I said. It was. I think we need something in here to. It's generous to say that I was just trying to be different. It's honestly built around a listener who's going to get bored with 4/4. And I don't think these are good writing instincts. Again, I'm proud of the product, but I think I got to find a different way to be motivated to work in on time signatures.
Yeah,
that's
fine.
just not healthy to be.
Well, I mean, that's because was that your mindset when you did it for Randy?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Well, because Randy, that shit flows super well. I'm
glad. Yeah,
we're coming out of the chorus. I had the vocal scream that kind of trails right into it. It fits really well, and then we go right back into a 4 breakdown. Like that's.
Yeah, I'm not saying having the wrong motivations necessarily produces bad music.
No, I know. It's hard to.
I definitely have the wrong motivations.
Yeah, but I mean, it's hard not to be super critical of yourself.
Yeah, I guess so. And I should say, in all fairness, I'm actually really pleased with the way it came out on the album.
Brian fucking crushed
specifically
it.
The chugs, like just the way. I don't know what it is about the tone that
pisses me off so much. Like, it pisses me off, and I mean, it was funny because it was Dustin who was like, "Oh yeah, like sometimes I play parts better, sometimes Alex plays parts better," and I'm like, I needed to hear that because.
Do you not appear technically on the bridge? Is that what it is?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
No, it's entirely Brian.
I forgot. Okay,
but it's one of those things where it's like you can't have an ego. Like I wasn't just gonna sit there and go, no, we're gonna sit here until I get a good take. It's like if it takes me 20 tries to get a good take, and Brian could do it in 3, why the fuck am I not gonna have Brian do it? Just have Brian do it, And actually, there's a lot of him doing that on this song because the pre-chorus he did the same thing.
Oh, okay.
His runs, he's got those nimble ass fingers, man.
Got those little fingers.
I got these gross like frog looking things. And
we'll put a picture in here.
well, yeah, a side by side view.
Just the cover is Chris.
A side by side. No, but those intricate runs he can just play, and I mean he's anything
a finessey player.
Well,
Absolutely.
but if anything, it makes me want to try harder to play better. You know, so I mean, only good can come out of it. Because I'm not gonna sit there and pout and be like, well, why can't I play as good as him? It's like, just fucking practice, and you might.
You've pouted before.
I have pouted, yeah. But you know what? But like, I'm not gonna get hung up on it. I will get down on myself that I'm like, oh shit, like whatever, I tried. But then it's like, you can get some momentum and be like, if I try like 3 or 4 times, I'm like, no, I'm feeling it. Give me a couple of more tries. Mm-hmm. If I get it, good, because I'm really starting to feel it. Yeah. But there's a point where you have to cut your losses and be like, look, we're burning light right now. Yeah. So like, if you can do it better, just jump in and do it better. So he did. Same thing with, there's a part. We'll get to it later. Or... What?
In another song?
Yeah, and Down the Mountain. Yeah. There's a part that like you played because you can play it better than I can. It's that
I guess that's true, actually. I forget about that.
Right. So stuff like that. Like if anything, recording has taught me that you just got to go in and whatever is going to produce the best product, you got to do. And if it's not you, it's not you. You know?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. The studio is absolutely a place that can bring ego out, and I applaud you that much more for knowing when it's time to step back for the greater good. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. It's a different story for me. I don't have that luxury on the drums.
Right.
The
drums fucking kick ass.
I'm glad. Yeah. Again, that's all credit to Mike McMillan up there in Boston. I was actually just talking to him the other day to get scheduled for recording the full length. I'm really excited to move forward on that.
There is a part. I think it's in the verse. Yeah. It's when we do the verse right after my solo, and you have this like tom roll. It's like boom dun boom dun. I was every time I listen to it, it comes through so clearly.
Yeah,
and I'm really.
That's all a matter of mixing.
I know,
writing is not impressive.
It's
a straight 16th notes.
Yeah, but the hits it's clean. It's so clean.
Oh, good. Great. All right. Well, so, that bridge. I knew it was going to get me off track. What were we talking about?
I mean, now all that's left is just it's the chorus again. I was happy with how I go. We did kind of like a, again we invert where. I got to go high for that last one. You got to bring the energy, and then you have a cool like low harmony that goes with it.
Yeah, I really like that moment.
And then we bring the intro A and intro B back. This intro B is a little different because then I like that we end on that one. Yep. Which is, again, I'm, however you can branch out in me and break up my patterns and shit like that is ending on that.
Yeah. That's very cool.
And it hangs there. And I was like, oh, I really like that. Like it's again, I think the part of it is like, oh, if we just end on an open again,
yeah,
like that's fucking boring.
I like ending on something that makes it feel a little unfinished.
Yeah, which is
an element we took from our live performance. There were the times that we have played Ancients. I think we've done that and tried to go into Deus Excommunicado the same way we do on the album. Yeah. And so I think we tried to take that and we hold it out. There's some feedback, and then it comes in with this driving. We'll talk about that song, I'm sure, on another day. But I think that was a great choice you made.
Yeah, I was definitely happy with it because it's different, and I don't know if it was necessarily different for the sake of different, but when I heard it, when I had done it for the first time, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like I've heard plenty of songs do that before. Yeah. Where they end on kind of like, unfinished or unresolved or the leading note.
Unresolved is absolutely the word.
But it's like, I guess in terms of a scale, it's like the leading note, right? It's the one that goes, the very next note would be the root note of the scale again.
It's the opposite, actually. Oh. It's a flat 2. I want to say it's called. Well, the 2 is called Brief Theory Aside here.
Jesus.
Alert. I'll add a.
I'm a flat 2.
I was gonna say I'll add a alarm sound in post for this theory alert.
Right,
No.
Hold on. Theory alert.
Oh, there it is. Oh, excellent.
There
Good.
we
I
go.
wasn't really gonna add the alarm sound anyway.
Okay, well.
But I think the second degree of the scale, under normal circumstances, would be the supertonic, but this is a flat 2.
Okay.
The song is more in kind of a Phrygian feel, so I don't fucking know. The answer is Brian from Lost Art just walked in
Are we potting?
with a new haircut.
We're just wrapping it up.
Yeah. So this actually is a pretty natural place for us to finish up. This has been our discussion of Ancients. Again, probably my favorite track on the record. Really pleased with the way it came out.
Yeah.
A lot of discussions about my own self-consciousness, your writing process. This has been good.
Yeah.
So I guess we're going to get back to it. Do some more playing, do some more writing, beer drinking. It's going to be great. But thanks so much for joining us. If you're hearing this ahead of November 18th, we encourage you very much to join us at dusk on that date for our album release party.
Let me see. Let me bring that up.
Yeah, dusk in Providence, if you're in that area.
We got Socially Problematic Children.
Yes, thank you.
We have
Plug the bands.
Frantic Endeavor, the Morgana Phase, really excited for that, and Junro. So those 4 bands... Tickets $5 at the door. Doors are at 6:30. Music at 7.
Yep.
So that'll be fun.
And the same day, you should be able to hear the full EP on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get it all. So thanks once again for joining us for this especially long episode. But it's been a pleasure.
Maybe we'll break it up into 2 parts. We'll see.
We just might.
Okay.
All right. You guys have a good one.